Okay, folks, welcome to this session this afternoon. We've got a really good panel mixture of owners and suppliers. The idea of the panel is to look at what essential requirements are for becoming a sustainable supplier, and the session's about, what we're going to ask some questions, what the ship owners are looking for when they go to a supplier, so the suppliers will know what criteria they need to be looking at in the future. And the session is going to be chaired by Marcus Hand, who is from SeaTrade and a very old colleague of mine from Lloyd's List days as well. So I'll hand over to Marcus. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you all for coming for this session. Sorry we're starting a bit late, but the last session overran somewhat. It's actually really fascinating. There were some really interesting points that came up in there, and I think some of those will probably come up in this session. And I'd also just like to thank IMPA for inviting me to, giving me the honour to moderate this panel on this important subject. I think it kind of goes without saying that sustainability is now something that impacts our lives, both personally and business. And in that regard, marine procurement is going to be no different from any other business. However, there are challenges, many challenges in terms of implementing, documenting sustainable practices, which are going to be somewhat unique to this sector, just given the way that it works. The logistics around ship supplies are more complex than they are, say, for a lot of sort of door-to-door deliveries. You're going to vessels and anchorages and so forth. There's a diverse set of geographies, with ships causing a multitude of ports in very different countries. I think one of the numbers from the previous session was like the average ship owner having something like 1,200 suppliers. So there's a huge number of companies and people involved. So this creates a lot of challenges when you're looking at sustainability and sourcing and accurate reporting, as was kind of being discussed with Scope 3 in the previous session. And some parts of the world are much more developed in terms of sustainability, so you get that push from places like Europe, and that's perhaps a lot then harder to implement when you get to other more developing parts of the world and so forth. I thought it was quite interesting when we were talking about the Scope 3 there, and I cover shipping broadly as a journalist, and I have done for many years. And what you see if you look at the ship owners, Scope 3, well, they're getting pressure on Scope 3 for their marine fuels in particular. And you will see the energy companies saying, we want you to have alternative fuels, sustainable fuels, and so forth. And then what you'll see then there will be the pressure from the ship owners on the next stage down for their Scope 3 and so forth. So it's kind of interesting how that's all working together. We have an excellent, a highly experienced panel of speakers covering ship owners, managers, and the supplier side, are here to explain both what they're looking at in terms of sustainability, how their needs can be met, and we'll also discuss the future a bit and how that will look. I'm going to start off just very simply by asking each panelist to briefly introduce themselves and their company and where they kind of sit within the procurement supply chain. And I'll just turn to Yanji next to me.
I'm from Ancomaine. My head office is in Shanghai, and welcome to Shanghai. I'm doing the ship channel business and the spare parts, and I would like to call myself all the other companies the same as a service provider. Thank you.
All right. My name is Rick Ackermann. I'm the head of procurement of BW LPG. We have the largest fleet of VLGCs, 53 vessels in total now, with offices here in Singapore, headquarters. We have Norway, Madrid, and Houston nowadays as well. I'm very happy to see so many people here in the audience because I did Gastech a couple of months ago. We were talking about sustainability as well, and I think there were like 25 people. And I almost had to pay them to come. So thank you very much for being here.
Hi, I'm Simon Potter, the CPO at Inchcape Shipping Services. We are a global port agency with 220 owned offices around the world in, I think it's 68 countries. Major port service provider covering all parts of the world. We have around 10,000 direct suppliers, plus around another 5,000 or 6,000 on our indirect side. So a big supply chain to manage, and Scope 1, 2 and 3 for us is a huge issue, also has to be a huge opportunity in how we develop our business and interact more closely with our customers and suppliers.
Hello, my name is Thaw Thaw Han. Since 2021, I'm at the IMPA Ambassador of Singapore, and I also procurement manager for the PT SOECHI Group. And in PT SOECHI, they are the leading Indonesia ship owner, which has about 55 vessels. Majority is a tanker vessel, and we also have a FSO vessel as well. And under their umbrella, we also have our own shipyard in Ackermann, as well as we have our own wine and gas industry company, and the core is PT Prima Energy. I joined to the PT SOECHI recently, which is less than 1 year. Most of the people in here may know from my previous company, which is I'm coming from. Hopefully today you guys can have some more questions to my previous boss.
Thank you, Jesper Larsen. I'm heading procurement for OSM THOME. I've been there for 1 year. Before that, I worked 5 years with Anglo-Eastern, heading the procurement company with Anglo-Eastern. Before that, I worked many years with Maersk and responsible for different business units within A.P. Møller - Maersk, Maersk Drilling and Svitzer tugboats and offshore supply vessels. Yeah, now I'm here with OSM THOME. I've been here for 1 year, so thank you.
Thank you. I think you can see we've got a great representation on this panel, going sort of across. We've got major ship owner, regional ship owner, major ship manager, and regional and global supplier. So we've got a real sort of cross representation on this panel. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back to each panelist in turn again. I'm going to ask an opening question. After that, we'll move to a Q&A. We've got plenty of people in the audience, so I'm hoping we're going to get lots of questions from the floor, because honestly, they're going to be more interesting than the ones I'll ask. So, please have a think of things you'd like to ask the panel. You've got a great opportunity here. But I'm going to start off by asking each panelist a question in turn, and I will start with Yanji again. Yanji, could you describe the steps that Ancomaine has taken to make sure its products meet sustainability targets and so forth?
Okay, this is quite a difficult questions for me, actually. Should be just to answer, but I think that most of you have your own idea, or we have as a supplier service company, we have the same idea. But what I'm thinking for the substantially suppliers is two. One, it is the products. And we, a lot of ship channels, as we start from the buyer and the sales. We don't know, even some of our buyers, we do not know exactly the goods or exactly the technical specifications. And what I'm thinking the next, that we should be more related to the products and the modification and something. Take example, in China, there are some goods, it is very expensive. The same goods you can buy half the prices. But how to solve this, it is our task. And we must meet our customer requirement. Taking two examples, if I can say that, like the pilot radar, and some of our makers, it is not so exactly meet some of the structured countries' requirement like Australia. So we have to be deeply look into it and make it or modify it or guide our maker to be exactly meet the requirement. And taking another example, like the new buildings, they need garbage compact. But for this kind of simple things in the market, they have got very complicated, like PLC, how to make the exactly running. But only the two functions, one is up and down. If we forget this PLC, the cost will be cheaper. So I'm taking these two examples to describe that what we do for our product as a suppliers. And the second second one, it is that how to use more IT. And now, the worldwidely, the chain supply, and we have to deal with a lot of big database. And this IT makes this job possible. Before it is, in our old time, I will still use the telex. And this day is past. We use the fax. This day is past. But with the internet, with the high technology, and even the AI, we can be the next way of our development. Take example that today in the morning, I discussed with one company called Mesh. They described that the final needs is the vessel self, the crew. And what we do, and we usually deal with, it is the office and procurement and purchase. And now, if the internet fast responsible and well communication, we can be more penetrate into the end user of the crew. They know the quantity, they know what they need, and the quality. So we can be more exactly meet the requirement of our customer by this IT technology. So this is what I'm thinking. So if there's some difficult questions, always pass to Mr. Jesper.
Right. I can see how this panel is going to go, but I think it's quite interesting the challenges you brought up there, and in terms of you're sitting in the middle, and it's difficult for you to know, exactly what how these things are made and where they're from, and also interesting that you can use IT as well.
Yes, actually to speak it is easy, but it is quite challenging. That's the reason I leave the hard part now.
Okay. Rick, do you want to say something? Or yeah, okay. I will move on to Rick. Now, you're obviously representing a major global ship owner. I think you said the world's largest operator of VLGCs. So I just know, got global operation. What are the main challenges you face in terms of ensuring sustainable supplies and marine purchasing?
Okay, well, the main challenge is, and I said it before on other panels as well, there's no standard. So what we are faced with at this moment is a lot of greenwashing, let's call it that. And until there's a standard that everybody has to adhere to, we're facing difficulties in comparing apples to apples. That's our main challenge. What I do see, and I made a joke earlier about so many people being here, but I'm serious about this as well. There's much more traction now for sustainability. 5 years ago, this used to be a very soft topic, which nobody really paid attention to. I can even recall being here in Singapore 5 years ago, where I had to explain to suppliers what ESG actually was. I had to send them examples of sustainability reports just to get them on the same track. If you look at it, if you look at the situation where we are now, I think everybody sees that there's a necessity to change what we're doing, especially in shipping. That's obvious. We're quite a polluting industry, and at the same time, we're very slow in changing. So that's why I'm really happy to see all of you here and so many suppliers. So you asked about challenges. As I said, the not having a standard is a challenge. At the same time, there's some positive news. I think at least it's positive that every company I deal with now has some sort of a sustainability program. So I would like to emphasize on that more than just saying that it's very hard to find sustainable suppliers. And yes, obviously that question, maybe it will be raised today, but it has been raised before. Sustainability or changing your ways costs money. And the question is always, will you as a ship owner pay for that? At the end of the day, the answer is yes. But in order to have a level playing field, and that's why we're here as well, we all need to be on the same page. And I think that's a very important part as well.
I think that's a very important point, level playing field. I think that kind of goes across a lot of industry sectors. And also, yeah, just to echo that point, it is great to see so many people in the room for this topic. And I think it emphasizes how important it has become.
Yes.
Thank you, Vic. I'll come back to you on a couple of points there later. I'd like to move on to Simon. And I thought, you're coming from the side you're coming from. Could you describe the key elements of Inchcape's offerings in terms of sustainability to its customers?
Yeah, sure. So as as a port agent, as a port agent, so we work on behalf of our customers. I think the things we have to focus on primarily are transparency and trust. So we're the eyes and ears in the port, so we have to have a compliant supply chain, not only in terms of emissions, but also in terms of anti-bribery, human rights, all that kind of stuff, the whole plethora of sustainability-related topics. And we need to keep moving forward. We see at the moment we've got a number of offerings for our customers, so we're looking at drones to replace launches, for example, electric vehicles, electric launches, electric tugs. But we see, even though we're focused on it and a number of our partners are focused on it and customers, it's really slow moving. So I think what we're noticing as well is it's the balance between carrot and stick. We tend not to move forward until we get more of the stick. And I think we see now in maritime with legislation, and the previous session I thought was really interesting because we know there are more things coming to us. And as Inchcape, we're trying to get ahead of the curve to support our customers. But I think in the next 4 or 5 years, all of a sudden we'll have so much reporting to do as customers, as suppliers, all the way through the Scope 3 supply chain, that one of our jobs is to make sure we're ready as a business, but also we're there to support our customers on their journey as well. Just one point on that as well. The research that we've done, and we look into our supply chain, a lot of which is SMEs, and I'm sure that's the same with many people out here as well. Around 20 or 30% of our suppliers have sustainability on their agenda, and I've looked at this across industries, and it's very similar. So that's also something we have to take into account. We're probably going to have to do a lot of this work ourselves, from capturing data, reporting, etc., because we can't rely on big parts of our supply chain who just won't have it on their agenda or don't have access to their own data.
That's a very interesting figure, actually, the 20 to 30%, and how much is involved, or how many companies are really looking seriously at this. Again, some points I'd like to come back to after. I'd like to move to Thaw Thaw, and just look broadly, what ship owners are doing to improve sustainability in the supply chain for procurement. Sorry.
Okay, actually the procurement basically they were starting as a first step. They were trying to understanding the supplier management system, which is environmental management system, social responsibility management system, anti-bribery management system, and so on. And on the second step, they were trying to be prioritize for the sourcing for the eco-friendly product or eco-friendly technologies, efficiency, transport, and so on. But on the method, it will be they will be trying to seeing the vendor, their corporate environmental responsibility for the packaging, such as how they are doing for the using for the renewal or recycled material for the packagings, or maybe they have a design to minimize the litter. They have any information about the sustainability information on the product, whether they have alternative solution for the single plastic usage, maybe such as silicone lid cover, and then maybe glass face bottle for the detergents or hand wash, or even hand sanitizer, and so on. And so, moreover that, nowadays procurement side also looking into the logistic efficiency as well from the freight forwarder, how they will be delivering the cargo, our last mile delivery efficiently, how they will be using optimized route for the delivery the good. Even let's say for example UPS, they are using the optimized solutions, solution to getting the right direction to be delivery to the package to their customer, so it will be saving the fuel consumptions. And finally, there will be some of the owner is even going to the 3D printing parts, because it can be safe for the waste management as well. So this is a few example of the ship owner is trying to get in the environmental green policy for their industry.
Okay, great, thank you, Thaw Thaw. And I think that gives us a lot of things to come back to in terms of what the ship owners are doing. I just noticed there's quite a few people stood at the back there. If you want to be more comfortable, there's actually quite a few empty seats down here. In fact, the entire front row is empty. So please come down and join us. Thank you. Right. Thanks. And I'm going to move lastly to Jesper Alex. You're representing a major ship manager, OSM THOME, and you also therefore represent a large number of principals and ship owners. So how do you balance the different needs of sustainability of your clients, and how does that affect your purchasing?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, because there's a lot of different demands, but I think in general, this is moved by legislation mainly, and then the demands by customers. Because if there was no demand by customers, not a lot would happen, I would say. And the customers' demand are different, but they are increasing. You know, customers are more interested in ESG than they have ever been. And therefore, we have to do something as ship managers, and suppliers have to do something. And actually now when we are here with IMPA, IMPA has a very good program called IMPA Act that you can follow, and you can work together with suppliers on improving what you do around ESG. And we did that with Ancomaine, and now we will do that with OSM THOME also. But what I'm trying to say is that you need to do something actively to help your suppliers to comply with the ESG. It's not sufficient anymore just to put a lot of nice words into your mission statement and other things that you protect the environment and so on. You need to prove you're doing something, and you need to be active, and IMPACT is a very good tool for that.
Thank you, Jesper. They're very and explaining about what the IMPA Act and its involvement there. Do we have some questions from the floor? Conscious that I'm asking all the questions. If not, I will. Okay, gentleman there.
I mean, in summary, if we think of... Do I just speak into it? So if we look ahead, say, 2030, at the moment, the shipping industry is the 4th or 5th biggest polluter in the world, really. And they say it's getting worse because, you know, because of the Middle East crisis, we've got longer shipping routes, we're shipping more by sea and so on and so forth. I mean, in 2030, where do the panel think we'll be? Will we still be 4th, 5th, or will we be the worst polluter? I mean, COP last week, 29, you know, you just felt there was nothing achieved, really. You know, Azerbaijan's a big oil producer. Trump will probably pull us out of all the carbon kind of decarbonization things. So if I'm able to come back here in 2030, you know, where would we expect the shipping industry to be in sustainability and?
That's a nice big question. Rick, you want to?
Sorry. Yeah, let me try to answer that. I basically the same thing as you. I really hope that we would have taken a lot of steps by that time. Will we be at number one with regards to reduction? I don't think so. I don't know the exact figures, but I think over 80% of anything consumer goods and whatever people need in the world is shipped. There are a lot of discussions on new types of fuel, ammonia. We're not there by a long shot. A little bit of a commercial part now. With BW LPG, we have changed to dual fuel vessels, which means that we can sail on LPG as well. And yeah, that's cleaner than regular fuel. It's still not what you want. And a lot of these discussions are also, and progress as well, or maybe lack of progress, are driven by commercial influences as well. Because yes, same thing I just said, we're running on dual fuel, but would we have done that, because it's quite an investment, if there was no return on investment at one point in time? I don't think so. So I can sit here and tell you we're an amazing company that works in a very green way, which is true up to a point, but there's money to be earned as well that will block some progress, definitely. And also one last thing as well, when I look at where we are now with low sulfur, that whole process within shipping took us like 15 years of discussion. So wherever it can be blocked within shipping, it will be blocked. So I'm not that optimistic, unfortunately, but I'm hopeful.
Thank you, Rick. Does anyone else want to have a go at answering that question? And where are they shipping in 2030?
Yeah, I think if I take it more from a sustainability perspective, I think Rick's absolutely right, and it will be legislation that drives the change. Obviously, we do things if there's a return on investment. I think one that springs to mind for me is ballast water treatment, where it was only a cost, but everybody was forced to do it for the greater good of the planet. So I think there will be an element of that. I mean, I have regular interactions with customers when we talk about sustainability and sustainable alternatives. But what I hear all the time is, well, we really want to do it, but if it's going to cost me more, I won't get approval for it. And it's not just in maritime. It's, you know, how many of us fly and see the little box that, or you can offset the fuel by paying a few extra dollars. I'd love to know if anyone ticks that box, because do we really know, is that what it's going to do? So I think there has to be some more clarity, some more movement, but it will, a lot of it unfortunately will be driven by legislation until we see real change. But that also will come at a cost to the business and in the end of the day the consumer.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a very interesting point on clarity and actually knowing the little box you tick. You actually mentioned the ballast water thing and the, that being compulsory. We actually had a story this morning that like 1 in 3 of those systems, it doesn't actually meet the standards that they're supposed to. So it's like it's been forced through, but hasn't necessarily achieved the goals that had been hoped. So hopefully that's not the same for the things we're talking about today. I'd actually like to come back to Rick on a point you made, which was the lack of standards. Is there any move to have a standard at all?
Yes, definitely. Because as I said earlier, it's very hard to compare apples to apples. And also I think what Simon just said is really true. It's about legislation as well. We, as a ship owner or as a client, whichever way you want to look at it, it's very difficult to make these decisions nowadays. And where do you, and we will come back to that later as well, where do you rank sustainability in your decision making, in your selection process? So yes, that's the answer. We need a proper standard.
Okay. Does anyone else on the panel have a view in terms of having a standard? Okay. Do we have more questions from the floor?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Mr. Porter, Christmas has come early for me. Nice to meet you. Yeah. I come from East Africa, Mombasa, and obviously you appreciate Inchcape very much. But do you feel your anti-bribery systems are working out in countries that have corruption ingrained in them?
It's a great question. I would say what I've learned over the course of my career is corruption is everywhere. It's not in the places that you would expect it to be. It's in every single nation. So we can all do more around anti-bribery and corruption. We do what we feel is more than the bare minimum. But can you eradicate, can any of us eradicate it 100%? Probably not. I think the minimum standard for any company is to have a policy in place, is to be able to have good engagement with suppliers and the customers to understand the risks within their supply chain. As I say, we've got more than 10,000 suppliers. That's really tough for us to do, but we spend a lot of time, energy and money and resources on it every year. So we are proud members of the IMPA Act. That's been hugely beneficial for us, and I would recommend everybody to sign up for it. It's a great toolbox and toolkit specifically designed for maritime that helps people on this journey. We have 10,000 suppliers in our due diligence program that highlights any issues that come up through media, convictions of company personnel, etc., etc. So that for us is the absolute bare minimum. But on top of that, we do have people out in the countries engaging. But I get regular questions from our employees who work in various parts of the world and say, well, I've been approached by a port official. what do I do? So part of our job is also to support our employees and also our customers and suppliers. So for example, if your ship goes through the Suez, not at the moment, but if it does, one of our staff members will be on board with the master of the ship to stop anything happening, any bribery attempts by the local port officials and that kind of thing, because it does happen very often. But if you've got specific examples, I'd love to have a separate conversation with you afterwards. That'd be good.
Very interesting topic. I would actually just like to put that to Jesper as well, from a ship manager's point of view, in terms of how you handle things like corruption on board, with the ship's crew.
Yeah, it's difficult, as Simon indicates. It's very difficult because it is happening, but we need just to have some procedures in place and make sure that people follow these procedures. So I believe that's the best we can do, and then have policies around that we don't accept it. But if it happens anyway, it could be. Okay.
Thank you, Jesper. There's a question there.
I have a question here. Thank you so much for the kind words from the previous discussion. I have a question here. I would like the panel's view on how do you define a sustainable supplier? Because we're all talking about it, but how do we actually define it?
Who would like to go first on that? Simon?
Yeah, I can kick off. Yeah, we've done a lot of work around this, and as I say, a very small proportion of what we've designated as sustainability ready. So, for example, if we take a hotel, do they have policies in place? Are they aware of what sustainability is all about? So yeah, we have a certain criteria. They don't have to have full traceability in place, but they need to have a good understanding. They have a sustainability policy in place. They either have sustainability targets or are looking to introduce them within the next 2 years. So we found it's very difficult to have a single standard across all different types of service or product in all different locations. So the fact they actually are aware of what sustainability is, they know why we're asking the questions, is for us a good start, but there's a long way to go.
Yeah, I know Simon is telling the truth, because this year we signed a contract with Inchcape, and they scored really high on ESG. And basically that's one of the reasons why we chose them as well. But getting back to that question, that really is the same principle. Not having a standard makes it very hard to choose what's right and what's wrong. And I do see this time also as an opportunity for a lot of suppliers, because you can set yourself apart from your competitors, because basically anything you do is it's a hit. If you do something else that nobody else does, or none of your competitors, you can score with that. But is it good enough? That's the question. I don't think so. I read a lot of sustainability reports. Looks great. Yeah, we have the solar panels on the roof. Who cares? At one point, it's much more than what we're doing right now. So does it make it difficult to properly assess whether a supplier is sustainable, yes or no? It is very difficult, absolutely.
Yanji.
Yeah, this is the questions I always ask myself as a supplier. And what I'm thinking now, I'm not so make the whole action. What I'm thinking now is that always gives our customer, whatever ship owner and shipman, something new, something updated. And you cannot maintain your supplies for 20 years, 30 years, let's put it longer, maybe only 2 or 3 years. But if you have something new, we put something that understand, become more close to the customer needs. I'm talking about the vessel needs. I'm talking about the requirement of the class of port control. So if we are continuously update ourselves, might be some idea we can longer our service. This is what I'm thinking.
Is it okay? I have a follow-up question, and then I will
Okay, and then
will recite. I think
in the middle at the back.
Okay. Quick follow-up question. So if we are focusing on what we call a sustainable supplier, how will we know that what they're supplying is actually sustainable? In other words, how will we know that what they do in the office is actually being passed on to what we buy as a ship owner?
Yeah, let me answer that one
Okay.
as well.
Thanks, Eric.
Again, it's very hard. That's why I keep on coming back to having a standard, because one of the problems I have, or challenges I have nowadays, with the whole sustainability scores, it's all based on questionnaires, and the questionnaires are based on, well, the results actually are based on the answers any supplier gives. So I can tell you that I'm as green as you want me to be, but do we actually audit these suppliers? That's, well, in your case, when you're talking about 10,000 suppliers, that's impossible. You cannot do that. So at BW LPG, we concentrate on our top 100 suppliers. We've recently, I think I can say that, started a cooperation with Achilles within shipping, with a lot of other ship owners as well, to come up with our own shipping standard. But again, still based on questionnaires and scores. So only when a supplier, and unfortunately we're in this situation, only when you have proof that a supplier is not sustainable, even though they tell you they are, that's where you can take action. But that's already after the fact. So are we in a predicament here, a difficult situation? Absolutely. Again, we need a standard.
Okay, so coming back to that issue of a lack of standards.
Yeah.
Okay, there was a gentleman in the middle at the back there. This question.
Luckily, Paul's not going to throw the mic at me, so no, good discussion and good question as well. I think it's important also to discuss the elephant in the room. As a supplier myself, my family company's a major supplier in the US. I know we talk about sustainability. Rick and I, we've spoken prior, and I know Jesper is very proactive on those matters as well. But far too often, I think as suppliers, we're caught between a rock and a hard place. I mean, we have to discuss the elephant in the room here. It's a very cost-competitive industry. So how do we invest in sustainability? Let's say if I put a solar panels on top of my warehouse in Houston, my cost goes up. And in a very cost-sensitive industry, you know, BW LPG and Rick might appreciate it, and Jesper might appreciate it with OSM THOME, but my other competition is gone. So we have to discuss that elephant in the room. What are your thoughts on how we can address that price sensitivity in this industry while being sustainable?
It's an extremely good question. Is there anybody in particular you'd like to address it to?
I mean, the two good candidates that come to mind are my friends Rick and Jesper. So I'll put you on the spot.
Yeah, thanks a lot. It's a good question. It's not a direct answer, but I believe it's important that a supplier has a plan, like Simon indicated, that they know what sustainability is and they have a plan on how to improve. And of course, sometimes this will cost some money. And then the ship owners and ship managers, they need to select suppliers who are sustainable and make agreements with these suppliers and try to increase turnover with these suppliers, and not with the suppliers not having the same program on sustainability. I would like to add another thing which make it even more complicated, this topic, and that is that you are many suppliers here, but you don't produce anything really. So you also are buying, what you are selling, you are buying from somebody else, and they're probably buying from somebody else. And if you should deep dive into sustainability, you need to go to your sub-supplier and their sub-supplier and so on, and then it gets even more complicated. But I believe the most important thing is that you have a plan on how to improve. And then you have to hope and believe that your customer, the ship owners and ship managers, will give you benefits for having this program. That's the way to look at it, I believe.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Well, I would like to make this into more of a black and white discussion. You have to. It's an investment. I always compare this, and I said it earlier today as well, to, let's say, the 80s and the 90s when ISO was coming up, and there were a lot of suppliers saying, I don't need this. I have workmanship. I've worked with your company for the last 20 years. I'm not going to do it. Well, a lot of these companies are not around anymore. And even if they are, we don't work with them. So at one point you have to, I understand from a commercial point of view, it's quite hard to make these decisions, but at the same time, that's why I call it an investment. There are studies showing that when you do that now, when you're one of the front runners, when you're not just following or doing the minimum, you will save money over time. I said earlier as well about BW LPG with our dual fuel project. That costs, and I can say that here, over $9 million, US dollars that is, per vessel. That's quite an investment, but there's a return on investment on that of 7 to 8 years. So at one point, it will save us fuel and it will save us money. Was it a big investment? Definitely. So I would like the narrative to change a little bit and us thinking in a different way about sustainability. There's no option. We need to do this.
Thanks, Rick. Thaw Thaw, do you have a view on this? Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, I like these questions. That's the reason I like IMPA. And it is some questions I would like to ask. Thank you.
So actually, it is not the direct mathematic formula for that one. So if you see as a initial high initial investment vice versa, the long-term, sustainable goal, you are having the, reduce energy consumptions, resource efficiency, and then you may have some of the country may have a tax credit, and then be brand value. Some of the credit you have more than value is more than financial, which is some of the young generation, they will have an employee certificate certifying, they will be happy for having that kind of working for that kind of companies, So it is not only about the tangible costs. You will see a lot of intangible costs for the having assay, and that's the most important is that there is a regulatory compliance will be enforced day by day. So we have to be follow the regulatory as well.
I think it's a really interesting area. I mean, and you see it across the industries and the first movers and what advantage you get by taking that first mover. On the flip side, I understand that if 80% of your customers don't care, it's a big investment to make. So I think it's a very good point of discussion. Do we have more questions from the floor? Gentleman there.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Sahid Science from NAV Supply in Brazil. And about this topic in particular, it's not a question, but I would like to share with you about an issue which is really what we are having situation right now. A couple of customers require us Tetra Pak bottles of water, which is blood expensive in Brazil, really, really expensive, unthinkable. And then we were something about 10% of our customers, they request these Tetra Pak bottles. So if we stop buying the whole amount of plastic bottles to change only for 10% of the customers, I mean, it won't be worth it. So what we found as a solution is we couldn't offer the Tetra Pak to all the customers, but we will offer the reverse logistic to bring all the plastic bottles the vessel has free of charge. So like this, we will reduce their expenses with garbage. We will give a solution, so we will still selling the plastic bottles, but we can take back all the plastic bottles. Not only the ones they bought from us, but as well the ones they have on board, and we will do their logistic reverse. Then, and now we are working with a company to issue a certificate for this, so we can send to our customers, and our customers to their customers. So in case of catering companies like OSM, which is our customer as well, so we can send to them and then to their customers. Like this, have a solution, an alternative solution, if we cannot find exactly what we initially was required, because of course, as our colleague said, the cost-effective situation is indeed something that is in the play to solve. We as supplier, we have to find alternatives to being a solution to the equation.
I think that does bring about an interesting point in terms of different geographies and how you handle situations in different areas. I think it also brings about the question of consumables as well. And would like to actually ask the panel, I mean, we're seeing that move to replace bottles of water on ships. What else can we do in terms of reducing the use of consumables on board ship? Maybe we can ask Thaw Thaw.
In the ship general ship supplier side, we normally asking for the allow for alternative solutions. Let's say for the cabin store, we will be asking whether they have a bigger package, rather than we are supplying, let's say for ketchup, a tomato sauce, rather than 1 liter by 1 liter, we will be asking for the bigger liter, or we will be asking for the the refill solutions, and then we may be asking for the other, alternative solution, which is not only for economical, also for the green solution. For the spare parts side, we are having the adapting the new upgrade and solution for the some of the old model, having the some of the engine to be having the lubrication system to be retrofit and so on, to be saving for the energy consumption as well. So we are also switching for the some of the vessel from the switching from the LED light to be saving for the fuel consumption and so on. So there is a lot of things we can do for the vessel.
So a very sort of broad picture there of what you can do.
Yes, even in the forwarder also they can do for the saving for a green policy as well, because they can do the right size packaging, so we can have a more space for the delivery. So everybody can be participate for the green policy step by step.
Okay. I think we have another question.
A question here regarding greenwashing, right? That's also a big elephant in the room, I would say. So what is your view, because what is your view on greenwashing in terms of this example I'm coming up with? So in the European Union, you are classifying it as greenwashing if a company installs solar panels on their factory and market their products as sustainable when they're not able to document the solar panels' effect on their products. So let me twist it around. Is it okay to document that a company has solar panels without documenting the effect on the specific product of that? Because I'm just saying, could you just focus on the company without the product? Wouldn't it be greenwashing if the company that installed the solar panels are marketing their products as green? Because who knows that electricity, is that going to the computers in the office, or is it going to the milling machines in the factory floor? And what are they actually saving? Right? That's my question, saying, should we look at a more data-driven approach, or should we focus on the suppliers? Or where does the panel see we need to go in the future?
Do you have a particular panelist you want to address that to, or everyone?
No, I won't put anybody on the spot. I just think it's an interesting point of view, is saying, are we mature enough if we just focus on the suppliers, or should we be more ambitious?
Well, first off, you promised not to ask a question anymore. So I think this should do it already.
I'll go in the back now.
And then the second thing, if there was only a company that could register this sort of data, right? I think there's one. But anyway, no, but again, you hit it on the nail on the head. This is exactly what we're talking about here. It's very difficult. But at the same time, would I block any sort of, so it is it can be considered as greenwashing, but would I block any type of supplier that makes the effort? Never. Because that's the phase we're in now, unfortunately. It's the effort that will set you apart, not the result at this moment. Only, and I'm going to say it again, only when we have a standard, then it's very easy to compare one supplier to the other. Right now, anything you do is right. Whether it's greenwashing or not, yeah, we will be fooled a lot of times, but we don't have the tools to make a proper assessment unless you properly audit each supplier. You go into the factory, you see what they do, like we did with ISO in the past. You see what they do, or do they only have a quality manual? That's not enough. So, yeah, it's the situation we're in right now. Unless anyone here has a better solution, I would hope so, but it's unfortunately that's where we are.
Okay, there's another question from the floor.
Yes, hello. I'm Eric from Nico, and I have a question for Rick, actually a follow-up question. You're looking for a standard, and in Europe it's going to be a big topic, CSRD reporting, verifiable, we need an accountancy statement to verify our figures, etc. Would you consider that as a standard you can live by?
That's part of standard. For me, standard would be a certificate, not several certificates like we have right now as well, but just one ESG or sustainability certificate. And then that would make life a lot easier for all of us up here as well. It's the fact, do you have it or don't you have it? It's as simple as that. But I know that I'm oversimplifying the problem here, but it would be the way forward. If I look at the situation right now, we have all these ESG consultants and companies popping up, one more comprehensive than the other. I cannot see, there's a Dutch saying, and you must know it since you're Dutch, there's a Dutch saying, you cannot see the trees in the forest or something like that. At one point there's too much. I understand. You know what I mean, right? Okay, it's just for us then. No, at this point there's just too much to choose from, and that makes it very hard. So, answer to your question, it's an element, for me that would be an element of a certificate, having that in place.
Okay, that's interesting, and see how that develops, getting those elements together. There's a question there from the gentleman.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you very much. My name is Noorul Amin from Admiral Marine, India. I just have a suggestion here, because a lot of it's a new journey that we are all going through, and we have examples like from Brazil and from various countries. Is it possible for IMPA to put up something like a web page in their thing, and we can actually have these case studies from suppliers, from owners, some kind of exchange, so that at least we are starting on that journey, we are contributing, others can see what's happening, and we can take a lot of input from there. Thank you.
Yeah, I would suggest you keep an eye on the IMPA Save campaign, and the previous session was talking about a lot of these issues. So I think that's a good takeaway. I'm sure Mikhail at the back of the room is a good person to talk to. But you're right, the point is everyone's in the same place. We're all struggling to get a handle on what we're supposed to do. And I think for me, part of it's about the initiatives you can make. Sustainability will sometimes cost more, but there's also quick wins. So for example, if you were managing a warehouse, you might want to put solar panels that have a really terrible payback. You might just want to start by putting sensors that turn the light off when nobody's in the warehouse, that kind of thing. So you can look at it from that angle, but a lot of the legislation that's coming through in the direction from authorities and from the principals and customers will be, we need to have transparency about the emissions that your supply chain is creating. So I think that's also somewhere we all need to focus. Hopefully we're all aware of what Scope 3 emissions are. If not, I would look it up, because it is all coming our way. And a lot of us have quite complex supply chains, and perhaps we don't know what's in our supply chain. So I think if we spend the next year getting to grips with that and understanding what is coming towards us and what we will need to report, then I think you will be much more attractive to your customer, and they're more likely to want to work with you as well.
I think that's part of what these sessions like this are here are for, so we can actually learn from each other, and have examples also on the internet. I think there's a question, was there?
I echo with, as a ship chandler, that we are traders. We procure the cheapest item available, what you're asking. We store it for a shortest period of time, and then we send it across. So the involvement of the carbon footprint that we have is how we store it, how we pack it, and let's come to the packaging. If we can agree on saying, let's focus, the entire team saying, let's focus on the packaging that you do, because the moment our product goes on board, and if it's a different packaging, the crew doesn't accept it for a reason that they are not able to store it if we don't send it in a certain way of packaging, right? And then that's where a lot of added waste is then there. We don't even know how to grab it back. So smaller things, we talk a lot more, but if there is smaller standards that we say, so when you supply to our vessels, you use this kind of wrapping, or you use this kind of pallet that can be taken back. And we start from something small and something tangible, so that we all agree, and a great say with IMPA say that they're doing in terms of these water bottles that we have turned, but something more in terms of where is the highest amount of wastage that is good morning. Where's the highest amount of wastage that is happening, and will it help us? But as I said, it's a cost involved. There's a cost involved. So some tangible results can be achieved, and we can also share with you the data on what we are doing based on what inputs that comes from your side as well.
Okay. I think that again, you know, about sharing those and what works and what doesn't, and what gives you the best results. Do we have more questions from the floor? If not, I know there was a comment in the previous session, there's no such thing as a stupid question. Well, I'm probably just about to ask one. And that there was the complexity of like complying with the Scope 3 emissions that was described in the previous session was quite mind-boggling at times. And it kind of makes me think of Fuel EU Maritime, which is coming into force next year in terms of emissions. And I've seen figures that say like 50% of companies, especially those who only trade a small amount into Europe, are just basically going to say, oh, we'll just pay the penalty. It's not actually, it costs us too much to comply, it's too complex. Is that where we're getting to with some of this, like the Scope 3 in Europe? Does anyone have a view on that? No. Okay, the question.
The German LKSG legislation is something like 1% of global turnover as a fine. Right. So that's essentially mandating due diligence on environmental and human rights parameters. 1% of global turnover, not profit, turnover, I think is quite a big stick to make sure that companies do the right thing. I don't know the specifics around the emissions that you mentioned, but I think there are examples where there's really quite strict penalties in place, and hopefully the EU CSDDD will follow Germany's sort of harder line approach to that. And that should push obviously forward-thinking companies to act on a lot of the initiatives that our panelists have talked about today.
Okay, that's interesting to know. I mean, yeah, 1% on revenue is a very significant penalty.
Maybe, and then getting back to the level playing field, that should apply worldwide to everybody. Otherwise, some countries will have an advantage over others. That's one. And yeah, I was going to say, I know it's going to sound very simplistic, but as a company, and we talked about the greenwashing before, but as a company, this should be one of your core values. Because at the end of the day, if it's all about showing how good you are, getting some more clients in, that's short term. Long term, you will lose out. That's basically where we're heading. So, and if it's only about money and about taxation and about fines, who's going to pay for it? At the end of the day, it's going to be the consumer. And that's not where we need to go. So it needs to be one of the core values of your company. That's where it will change.
That's quite a big challenge for some companies, changing those core values. Do we have any further questions from the floor? Conscious we're probably getting towards drinks, and we are what stands between you and drinks. I think with that, I would like to sort of... A question there? Okay. I'd like to sort of maybe just ask each panel member, what would you say was like, what would you identify as the single most important factor to sort of the next thing you do in terms of sustainability in procurement and supplies? What would be the number one thing that you think needs to happen? I'd just like to ask that to all the panel. Maybe we'll start with Jesper.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay. It's not the answer to the question, but I will say it anyway. I believe that there's a lot of ship chandlers here, and if you are considering to make some more expensive packaging material for the benefit of the environment, or you want to supply these instead of plastic bottles, I recommend that you get some kind of commitment from your customers, like ship managers and ship owners, before you do it, because it's the right thing to do, but it's also cost money. So with many of the initiatives you like to do, I think you should discuss it at least with your biggest customers before you do it, so you can agree on it, and so they will support you in what you are doing.
For 2025, what I'm trying to be targeting in the green policy is that I will have more closer collaboration with our business partner, which is a supplier, to having the more awareness about where is our goals and policy, where we are heading in terms of the spare parts, in terms of the ship supply, and in terms of other policy and procedures. And also we will be having for the long term understanding each other, to be exchanging the information where we are standing for, because in some of the developing country you may find it out that there is not market demand for the green policy products, so very difficult to find those kind of product in those country. And then secondly is we find it out very expensive, because they don't there is no exclusively force them to do it. Right, so we have to do a lot for awareness sessions or training to our own employees, and as well as to some of the local vendors. There is that thing is that we may have to be proactively long-term investment for the risk mitigation as well, because as a ship owner, it is very important to be having the a regulatory compliance in ahead, and then brand enhanced reputation is very important for the ship owner.
And I think for us at Inchcape, it's continuing the journey of engaging with our suppliers. We've taken a sort of a risk-based approach, or a targeted approach. There's no point going out to all of them, as we said before, but we'll look at our highest spend suppliers, or perhaps suppliers that we know will struggle to meet our sustainability criteria. And it's part of our SRM program, our Supplier Relationship Management program, to include sustainability and just educate our supply base so they understand the challenges that are coming and the challenge that we will increasingly face from our customers.
Yeah, for me, the main thing is for the coming years is to move ESG more up on the selection criteria, even more than we did before. Just as an example, when we did the hub agency tender 4 years ago, ESG was on number 14 or 17. I'm a little bit lost there, but 14 or 17 with regards to the weighing factor on the outcome of the tender. This year we moved it to number 4. So that means it has a much bigger impact on our selection. So it's basically doing what you really believe in. And interestingly enough also, there was no objection from no one in our management team on doing that. While, as I said in the beginning of this session, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, this was a soft topic, and it was all about money. ESG has moved up on selection criteria, and it will. I'm not going to say that it's ever going to be number 1, but it will be a deciding factor.
For us, the really target is that to invest more in the IT to save more cost, to painting ourselves more green, to take this money.
Okay, thank you. Thank you to the panel. I think you kind of got there a flavour for what the panel thinks is like the next thing that they want or see. And I think this whole thing, this sustainability, ESG, is here to stay. You can't run away from it. It is going to be important. It will become, as was just said, it's becoming a deciding factor for some companies, the top companies, and then that will filter down, especially if you have regulation and that kind of level playing field. So I'd just like to thank our panel so much for their views and opinions. Thank you. And I believe there is a reception outside.